Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Elka Tavanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation today. It's year 9 of the war and day 322 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land. And I traditionally want to thank the representatives of all the mass media who tell the world the truth about this war. Our brief schedule of briefings for today is as follows. At 1 o'clock, joining us will be Vitaly Kim, the military governor of Mykolaiv region, and we will be talking about the situation in Mykolaiv region. At 13:30, joining us online will be Dmytro Zhivitsky, the military governor of Sumy region, and we will talk about the situation in Sumy region. And joining us right now in this studio is Andriy Zhuk, co-founder and chairman of the Retail Association of Ukraine. Mr. Andriy, good afternoon. So let's start our conversation with how these 11 months of war impacted the retail industry of Ukraine. We understand that it was utmostly important period for all the Ukrainians, and we understand that it could not influence the retail business. So what were the main challenges faced by the retail business in Ukraine? Good afternoon, everybody. Dear colleagues, good afternoon, dear spectators. I'm co-founder and the chairman of the Retail Association of Ukraine. It's their organization of retail networks which unites both food and non-food chain stores. So the stores that not only sell food but other kinds of household goods. For example, today we will be talking about the economic front that we are fighting on, and it's quite interesting. Why? Because food and retail are critical infrastructure for our population. In fact, we remember the month of March. I would like to start with March today because every month we make an analytical summary, and the month of March is the starting point when we see what's going on with the industry, and on a monthly basis we observe what's going on and we can analyze certain facts. So we will, as I mentioned, we will be talking about both food and non-food retail chains. About 29% of the chains were closed in March. So it was only 71% of the chain stores that were operating as of the end of March. So when we summarized our analytical data by the end of December, we found out that only 7% are still closed, while 93 others are operating. But talking about food retail in particular, 21% were closed by the end of March, and only 5% are not operating as of the end of December. So these are the figures that can demonstrate how the industry is moving, and however, those are not the economic indicators of the operation of this industry. For example, only 65 food supermarkets were working in Kherson in the beginning of the year, and now it's only 5 of them. And those are such chains as ATB, Tavriave, Silpo, and Eco Market. So now it's only 5 of them working. Meanwhile, 65 were working in the beginning of the year. So the industry were standing united from the very first days of war. We created a working team that included the biggest retail chains, along with the representatives of the Cabinet of Ministers and the Office of the President, and every day during about 2 months we were holding meetings, and we were solving very important issues. There were a lot of questions, and we were receiving very prompt responses. And I want to extend my appreciation about this cooperation with the Office of the President. I never mentioned it publicly, but thanks to this cooperation we witnessed that there were food products in the shelves of our supermarkets in March. And the contribution of the Office of President is huge, and the industry felt it easily to adapt to the new conditions, because in case there are no products in the shelves, the population might start panicking, and it helped us to go through those difficult times. Andriy, you mentioned that the industry got back to its normal operation. Well, maybe not back, but according to the figures that you just voiced, we see that with the exception of 5%, the stores opened. Do those figures include the stores located in temporarily occupied territories? Yes, this figure includes the stores that resumes their operation and the new stores as well, because there was a huge migration in Ukraine, not only in terms of population but business-wise as well. Many retailers, they started opening new stores in safer regions of Ukraine. So there was a very serious, very big-scale migration. So I want to mention again that 5% are food retail, and it's not an economic indicator. Our activity became, I would say, the cost of works grew substantially, as well as logistics, for example, and many other things became more costly. We will talk about that a little bit later. But we lost about 7 million of population. It's the figure equal to the population of Finland, for example. And those are the people who don't buy products in Ukraine now, and it's a big challenge for retail now. Sorry, we're having a technical issue. We got some run signal here. Yeah, we can continue. I can also tell you what's going on in the industry, what we're seeing. We started visiting the stores less frequently, but when we come to the store, we buy more. For example, previously, we were thinking that we can buy something late in the night when there was no curfew, and the stores were operating all night long. And now with this air raid alerts and curfew, we come to the stores less frequently, but usually we buy more. And we see the decrease in the number of bills. Meanwhile, the figure of the bill grew, which is also influenced by inflation that's happening in Ukraine, because unfortunately the prices grow as well. And inside the food chains, there are many interesting things going on. For example, there is the redistribution. There are manufacturers who were impacted in Bev or PepsiCo, Sandora. They are located in the regions of Ukraine where they were not able to operate, so they shut down their manufacturing. So those categories fell dramatically. Like in case of InBev, it's 70%, and in case of PepsiCo, it's 64%. But there are other manufacturers like Uman Pivo or Poltav Pivo who were able to make it, who were able to cover the demand. And Uman Pivo demonstrated 343% growth, meanwhile Poltav Pivo 241% growth. And this happened due to the shutdown of the bigger manufacturers like Sun and Bev, and now it's the time for new opportunities for someone new, for those who were able to adapt to the new realities. You mentioned about the return of retail chains to Kherson, but judging by the figures that you mentioned, it's slow. But the return of the retail chains to the deoccupied territories, how was it happening? How was this challenge difficult for our business? Were we able to return retail to Kharkiv region, which was liberated earlier than Kherson region? And how steady is this process? How is it going on? Well, we all understand that there are many technical issues that do not allow us to do it in a prompt manner, but for retail, it's very serious investment of cash and time. And its principle, as soon as there is an opportunity, news opportunities of work, retail starts working immediately. So within the first week after the liberation of Kherson, we've all seen the interview of the Director General of ATB, who was already opening the store, the ATB store in Kherson. So imagine just to deliver the goods within a couple of days to resume the normal operation of the store. I'm having goosebumps actually. It's a real deed. It's a real deed that was made by retail and that is being made by retail now. And now many shops are out of operations. As I mentioned, only 5 out of 65 are working. And we see there are sales in those stores. There is population who needs to have their demand covered, and the situation is way worse there with the air raid alert, and the generators are working all the time there, which is 3 to 4 times more costly than working out of the power grid. You just touched the subject that I wanted to talk about. We understand that our retail already learned how to work under the conditions we all ended up in, but then October came when the massive strikes on our energy infrastructure began, and it was another challenge for retail how to arrange their operation under those circumstances. We know that many retail chains opened the resilience stations based in their stores. So how did they make it? Retail was preparing beforehand, but you cannot be prepared for everything. What happened in October 2022 was the first shock, but we started working, we started procuring generators, and the association, one of our type of activities is the analytics, and I can share those unique figures with you. As of today, out of food chains, 50% are equipped with generators. In fact, it's the half of the retail chains, of food retail chains. They can work autonomously. Until the end of January, it will be 55%. So until the end of January, the majority of the food retail chains will be equipped with generators. It's hard to forecast this figure as of the end of winter, but my forecast will be maybe 60-70%. That 60-70% of the shops will be equipped with generators. So just in a couple of months, starting from October, this figure grows. Those are crazy investments, and this figure shows how the retail chains are adapting. Well, maybe not only with the generators, but small batteries installed in the small shops, but that's all investments and investments. And business very quickly invests money for adapting to these new circumstances, new conditions. And as to the resilience stations, this is the government program that business joins to. We've all seen somebody making cutlets in Rosetka store, I think, and the majority of the shops, they can support the population. People can recharge their phones, so people can get heated inside the stores. Well, both shops and the trade centers, they have very important social functions. They are our resilience stations now. So let's talk about the forecast for 2023. Which shops will feel it easier to survive It's usually how the people think that if the chain is big, it feels easier to adapt to the new conditions. And will small business find their place in these new conditions? Well, it's difficult to say that someone feels it easier, and I may sound surprising now, but the factor which influences significantly is not only preparation and luck. Someone was located in the west of Ukraine, someone was in the east, and there is no big difference. Either it's a big chain or a medium-sized chain. We'll see what's going to happen in 2023, but I can tell you for sure that those will feel it easier, who will promptly take decisions, who will not wait for the power to go back on, and those who feel it easier to fit, to survive, to adapt, those will survive. Well, we see, for example, now one shop is working, another one it does not. For one is equipped with a generator and one is not equipped. So definitely you will go to the shop which is equipped with the generator. It's obvious, and you will give your money to the shop which operates. So those businesses who will be quicker to adapt, they will win. So now the business showed its consolidation. As I told you what was happening in March, I've heard very good saying that let's do competition after victory, but now it's time for joint effort, for finding joint solution for our problem. So it's all about technical adaptation to the demand, to what people want to buy. We see that the people's purchasing capacity decreases, unfortunately, and in 2023 those who will feel easier to adapt, that they will survive. And it will depend on the situation in Ukraine, because now that 7 million Ukrainians are abroad, they spend their money abroad. And how many people are coming back to Ukraine this year? And the more time passes, the less is the percentage of people who come back. For example, those who were able to find themselves abroad, like, you know, the Ukrainians are, well, in the world is used to the refugees who run from the poverty, and Ukrainians run from war. So that they run from the war, but they have some money, they have some savings, and they pay those money in other in retail chains of other networks, and only time will show how much Ukrainians are coming back. I don't know whether it will be 50 or 30 or 70% of those who left now who will be coming back. It will depend on the situation in Ukraine, but I hope that this percentage will be bigger, and the more people come back to Ukraine, the more is a turnover in the retail chains. Andriy, you said that it's important for the retailer to understand what people buy. How did the structure of those purchases changed for Ukrainians who buy things during the war? I don't have those figures at hand. When we had this dry law, when the alcohol sale was restricted, so that category fell dramatically, but then it started resuming its growth when the restrictions were released. And there are still many restrictions still in effect in Ukraine, which still make it difficult for the business to operate. It's the decentralization in Ukraine, and in every region the local government resolves on the restrictions. And besides alcohol, I can tell you also about the children's goods. Well, because the majority of those who left Ukraine are women with children, and this category of products, it fell dramatically as well. For example, the household appliances, they demonstrated minus 40% falling. I was talking to car importers recently. We can include this in retail too, and their fall is minus 60%. So when we compare it year to year, it's minus 60%. So people now buy 60% less cars in Ukraine. Are those who growing among the categories of goods? Well, I told you about those who were able to adapt, like Uman Pivo, Opel Tav Pivo. So they grew times. They grew their sales times and times. And I can also add that analyzing the retail activity in this year, we observed that 87% new shops were opened. So we forecast that in 2022 there will be probably 20 new stores, or 200 new stores opening. So new stores are opening. Thank you for this information, dear colleagues. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Good afternoon, Yulia Vakumova, Ukrinform. Could you please tell us, do you have information regarding the changes in the number of retail employees? Did this number grow or did it decrease? Do the retail chains and the owners, do they feel any deficit of staff? Thank you. It's a very good question. I don't have these figures right in front of my eyes, but I can tell you that there is a decrease which amounts to less than 10%. After we wrap up, I'll show you the exact figures in my notebook, but those figures are less than 10%. There is about less than 10% decrease in personnel, which poses a minor issue, and it's the biggest problem in the deoccupied territories. To reopen the store, you don't only need to buy the generator and to deliver the goods, but the question number one, as you mentioned, is the employees. For example, in Kharkiv region, it was difficult to open quickly because people left. And the number one thing is to find people, because if people leave and they're afraid to come back, it's very difficult to get them back. Well, now it becomes a little bit easier because somebody did not open at all, and those who open, they are able to find the new employees. But there is this problem, and it's a serious problem. Any more questions, dear friends? No more questions. I want to thank you, Mr. Andriy. I'm reminding you, joining us was Andriy Zhuk, co-founder and chairman of the Retail Association of Ukraine. Thank you. And for your dear colleagues, our next briefing is at 1300. Joining us will be Vitaly Kim, and we will be talking about the situation in Mykolaiv. Bear with us. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.